Have you noticed how even in the age of information, the mind has never been so restless? People surrounded by technology, comfort, and endless choices, yet more anxious, stressed, and lost than ever. It feels contradictory. The more we have, the less inner peace we find. Mental health has become a silent struggle, a burden carried behind forced smiles and accelerated routines. But here's the controversy. Maybe the real problem isn't the world itself, but the way we choose to deal with it. What almost no one talks about is that there is an ancient path, often ignored, that can restore emotional balance and the serenity we're all searching for. A path that doesn't require miracle formulas or shallow promises, but instead teaches mental discipline capable of turning anxiety into clarity and chaos into tranquility. That path is Stoicism, a philosophy so practical it can shift the way you think today, in just a matter of minutes. The crisis of the modern mind. We live in a time where the mind never seems to rest. People wake up already immersed in screens, notifications, demands, and constant comparisons. The excess of stimuli makes anxiety and stress almost daily companions, silently corroding mental health. This accelerated rhythm, treated as normal by many, blocks the growth of inner calm. At its core, the crisis of the modern mind is not only about busyness, but about the inability to pause and recover emotional balance. Even moments of leisure have become battles for attention. Social media turned into showcases of idealized lives, where each like seems to measure a person's value. This fuels endless comparison, one of the greatest enemies of inner peace. Fragile mental health does not arise only from external pressure, but also from how each individual internalizes it. The result? A mind that never finds serenity, constantly on alert, as if always on the verge of failing. The body reacts to this overload as if there were real danger nearby. Rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, insomnia, symptoms increasingly common in people who, on the surface, have it all together. It's proof that the modern mind lives in conflict with itself. Emotional balance is lost when there's no space for reflection or silence. The pursuit of well-being is confused with consumption, and mental health is treated as secondary until it collapses. It feels as though we are running a race with no finish line. Endless commitments and a lack of time for self-knowledge create a void that no external achievement can fill. This internal emptiness manifests as daily frustrations, leading to emotional explosions or silent anguish. Stoic serenity, so necessary, seems distant in a world of constant noise and packed schedules. Even rest has turned into an obligation. Sleep well, meditate, exercise. Everything gets crammed into endless to-do lists, as if they were chores instead of natural ways to regain balance. The mind, pressured to be productive even while relaxing, loses sight of true tranquility. In this scenario, mental health needs more than modern techniques. It needs a deeper path, one that can bring authentic serenity. And maybe the real question is, how can we find inner peace in the middle of so much chaos? How can we restore calm when everything seems to pull us outward into noise and rush? That question leads us to something more than quick therapies or superficial advice. There is an ancient philosophy, discreet yet powerful, that stands as a safe refuge in the storm of modern times. Stoicism as a refuge. In the midst of confusion and emotional overload, there is a philosophy that hasn't aged with the centuries. Stoicism. Unlike distant theories, Stoic philosophy was created for everyday life, to face external chaos without losing inner balance. It teaches that true serenity is not born from circumstances, but from the way we respond to them. When the modern mind searches for refuge, it finds in this ancient wisdom a fortress capable of sustaining inner peace and resilience. The Stoics believed life would always be full of unpredictability, and that tranquility doesn't come from trying to control the world, but from mastering what lies within. That is why Stoic wisdom still echoes so strongly today. Instead of fighting every detail of reality, we learn to cultivate acceptance and mental discipline. This refuge is not an escape from life, but a way to face it with Stoic serenity, even when everything around us seems to collapse. Picture a chaotic day when nothing goes as planned, meetings delayed, traffic jammed, family tensions rising. Stoicism offers an alternative. Pause, breathe, reflect, and ask yourself what truly depends on you. This practice transforms anxiety into clarity and restores the sense of emotional control. It's not about denying problems, but refusing to be enslaved by them. In this way, Stoicism works as an invisible shield against mental exhaustion. This refuge is also a school of self-knowledge. Through daily reflection, one realizes that much of their suffering doesn't come from what happens outside, but from what they feed inside their own mind. Stoic philosophy invites us to exchange rush for inner calm, despair for serenity. The Stoic refuge doesn't promise to eliminate problems, but it teaches us to face them with mental strength and emotional balance. It's as if a restless mind finally found a safe harbor. It is no coincidence that so many leaders, thinkers, and even modern athletes turn to Stoicism for guidance under pressure. By opening the writings of Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, we discover that the dilemmas of 2,000 years ago are strikingly similar to those of today. This creates a powerful bridge between past and present, proving that Stoic wisdom remains a reliable compass for anyone seeking a balanced life filled with inner peace. But this refuge offers something even deeper, the ability to look inward and realize that true freedom does not come from controlling the world, but from mastering yourself. And it's at this point that we arrive at one of the greatest pillars of this philosophy, the mastery of emotions. Mastery of emotions. One of the greatest strengths of Stoicism is teaching that we are not slaves to our emotions. Anxiety, anger, sadness, or fear appear as inevitable visitors, but they don't need to take ownership of the house. Stoic wisdom shows that the secret is not repressing feelings, but learning to understand them and deal with them consciously. This ability creates powerful emotional balance, restoring serenity in the midst of modern chaos. The Stoics compared strong emotions to storms, intense, fast, but fleeting. If someone panics in the rain, they only suffer more. If they accept the water, they cross calmly. The same applies to feelings. When we learn to observe anger or anxiety without judgment, they lose part of their grip on us. Mastery is not coldness, but applied emotional intelligence, protecting mental health and strengthening inner calm. In practice, this can be trained in simple ways. Imagine someone provoked by another driver in traffic. The natural impulse is to react with fury, but Stoicism teaches to pause and ask, is it worth giving up my peace for this? That one question changes everything. Emotional mastery is built through daily choices that may seem small but shape an entire life. It's mental discipline in action, turning irritation into opportunities for growth. Stoic philosophy also points out that we often suffer more from the interpretation of events than from the events themselves. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And this becomes clear when we notice that the fear of failure hurts more than failure itself. By practicing mastery of emotions, one discovers the power to turn unavoidable pains into lessons, reducing the mental burden they carry. This process builds mental strength and deep self-knowledge. Those who master their emotions are no longer hostages of unstable moods or other people's words. Instead of reacting automatically, they respond with clarity and serenity. That is how inner peace is cultivated, by freeing the mind from the tyranny of impulses. In the midst of external noise, a center of unshakable calm emerges. But to reach complete mastery, another essential step is needed, realizing that life has limits. Not everything is under our control, and accepting this truth is key to reducing anxiety and living with more lightness. This brings us to the next teaching, accepting the uncontrollable. Accepting the uncontrollable. Much of anxiety is born from the attempt to control what simply cannot be controlled. Stoic philosophy teaches that life is divided into two spheres, what depends on us and what lies beyond our reach. The problem is that most people waste energy trying to change what was never in their hands. This useless struggle drains mental health and robs us of serenity. By learning to accept the uncontrollable, we create space for inner peace and emotional balance. Picture someone who spends days worrying about the weather. They can check forecasts, complain about rain or harsh sun, but none of that will change reality. Stoicism shows that clinging to control creates frustration, while acceptance brings freedom. Once the mind understands that not everything needs to be under command, a sense of lightness arises. This practice is not passivity, but intelligence, focusing mental discipline on what can truly be done and letting go of unnecessary battles. Relationships offer another clear example. Many suffer because they want to control the opinions, choices, or even feelings of others. This attachment creates inner conflict and drains mental well-being. Stoic wisdom reminds us that the only territory we truly govern is our own interior. Stoic serenity grows when we give our best without expecting the world to bend to our desires. Acceptance, paradoxically, becomes a form of freedom. Training this distinction daily is like strengthening an invisible muscle. Whenever something goes off track, instead of diving into despair, one can ask, is this within my control or not? That simple reflection already brings clarity and restores balance. Little by little, we develop the ability to filter concerns, focusing only on what truly makes a difference. This is how inner calm is born, not by trying to control the universe, but by learning to master ourselves. Accepting the uncontrollable also reshapes how we see life itself. Loss, illness, and even death, inevitable and universal, stop being treated as personal injustices. They become part of the natural course of existence. This change of perspective reduces suffering and strengthens resilience. Stoic wisdom doesn't erase pain, but makes it bearable, showing that suffering comes less from events and more from our resistance to them. And as we realize that acceptance is not resignation but courage, we discover a new path to serenity. It is precisely here that the door opens to something practical and transformative, daily exercises that keep this philosophy alive and turn serenity into a habit. Daily practices of serenity. Stoicism is not just abstract theory, it's a set of practices designed for everyday life to strengthen mental health and cultivate inner peace. Ancient Stoics didn't expect serenity to appear by chance, they built it step by step through conscious habits. Among these exercises were morning reflection, philosophical journaling, and meditation on death. These simple yet powerful tools help maintain emotional balance even amid modern chaos. At dawn, many Stoics reserved time for morning reflection. This practice prepared the mind for the day ahead, reminding themselves that they would meet difficult people, setbacks, and unforeseen events. By anticipating these situations, they weren't caught off guard. Anyone can do this today. Before the day begins, take a few minutes to imagine possible obstacles and decide to keep inner calm despite them. This preparation strengthens resilience and reduces anxiety. Philosophical journaling was another pillar of mental discipline. Marcus Aurelius, both emperor and philosopher, constantly wrote to himself, recording thoughts, reflections, and corrections of behavior. This habit brought clarity and self-knowledge. In modern times, journaling about emotions, challenges, and lessons can act as silent therapy, bringing Stoic serenity and well-being. It's a practical way to organize the mind, transform confusion into clarity, and strengthen emotional discipline. Meditation on death may seem unusual at first, but it served a profound purpose. By remembering life's brevity, the Stoics learned to value each moment and to shrink the weight of trivial worries. This practice was not morbid, but liberating. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, they found tranquility in understanding that every moment is precious. Today, reflecting on our mortality can cultivate gratitude and ease anxiety. These daily practices work like anchors in the stormy sea of life. Consistency in them creates serenity that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's as if the mind grew stronger roots, impossible to be ripped out by fierce winds. Emotional balance, nourished day after day, becomes a habit rather than a distant wish. This is how Stoicism becomes a living tool to reinforce mental health. And once we realize that serenity doesn't come from mere thoughts, but from repeated actions, we understand that we are building an inner fortress. Yet there is still an essential quality to sustain this path, one that directly connects with mental health: resilience. Resilience and mental health. Resilience is like a muscle that can be trained. For the Stoics, it wasn't about enduring life with resignation, but about facing it with mental strength and serenity. Every obstacle was seen as an opportunity for growth, not as a sentence of suffering. This perspective transforms mental health because it reshapes how we interpret difficulties. What once felt like a burden now becomes training, and what seemed destructive can turn into valuable learning. Imagine someone who loses their job. The initial impact may be devastating, but through the Stoic lens, it doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of reinvention. Stoic philosophy teaches that mental discipline allows us to transform such moments into reflection and self-knowledge. What can I learn from this? Where can I grow? This shift reduces despair and strengthens inner peace, creating serenity even in the midst of crisis. Resilience also shows up in smaller everyday situations. A delay, unfair criticism, or sudden frustration can easily disrupt emotional balance. But for those practicing Stoicism, these episodes become training grounds for inner calm. It's as though each problem is a mental gym where discipline and patience strengthen the ability to face tomorrow with more serenity. Furthermore, Stoic resilience is deeply tied to the acceptance of the uncontrollable. Once we understand that some things are simply beyond our hands, life feels lighter. This acceptance doesn't erase pain, but it prevents it from growing bigger than it should. Mental health thrives in this environment because the mind no longer wastes energy fighting impossible battles. It's emotional balance in practical, constant action. It's worth remembering that resilience is not only personal, but also collective. Resilient people inspire others to find calm amid chaos, creating an atmosphere of shared serenity. This positive influence strengthens relationships, reduces conflicts, and nurtures community well-being. Stoicism shows that when we cultivate Stoic serenity within ourselves, we also contribute to the mental health of those around us. And when we see that resilience is not a gift, but a habit, we understand that the next step lies in developing even deeper tools for balance. That's where the unexpected power of something simple but transformative comes in. Silence. The language of silence. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools for mental health. In a world that values constant chatter, instant opinions, and immediate reactions, choosing silence almost feels rebellious. Yet for the Stoics, silence was an ally of inner peace and emotional balance. It isn't emptiness, but fullness, because it allows the mind to breathe, filter thoughts, and recover serenity. In those pauses, the wisest answers often emerge. The Stoics practiced silence as a form of mental discipline. Instead of reacting impulsively, they learned to wait, observe, and reflect. This not only strengthened their mastery of emotions, but also helped avoid unnecessary conflicts. Think about it. How many arguments could be avoided if, instead of harsh words, there were just a few seconds of pause? Such a simple habit protects mental health, reduces tension, and preserves tranquility. In daily life, silence can be cultivated at key moments. During a heated discussion, choosing not to respond immediately is already an act of self-knowledge and mental strength. Instead of joining a game of provocations, the one who practices the language of silence becomes master of themselves, radiating Stoic serenity and presence. This kind of behavior doesn't go unnoticed. It commands respect and draws attention without needing grand speeches. But silence is not only external, there is also inner silence. Amid constant notifications, opinions, and comparisons, disconnecting for a few minutes each day is vital for mental health. A short walk without your phone, a few minutes of mindful breathing, or even enjoying coffee in silence are powerful practices. This pause regenerates the mind, strengthens inner calm, and creates space for reflection and clarity. Curiously, silence can also be an act of courage. It takes mental discipline to resist the urge to always have the last word. Often, those who speak less earn greater respect, precisely because they transmit control and balance. This mastery is not weakness, but Stoic wisdom in action. Silence, therefore, becomes a universal language of serenity, capable of easing anxiety and strengthening relationships. And when one recognizes the transformative power of silence, it becomes clear that serenity should not be occasional, but a continuous way of living. Here, Stoicism reveals its deepest proposal: serenity as a lifestyle, not an exception. Serenity as a way of life. Mental health should not be seen merely as the absence of crisis or pain, but as the continuous presence of serenity. Stoicism teaches that true inner peace is not a rare visitor, but something built daily through mental discipline, reflection, and consistent practices. Living with Stoic serenity means choosing a balanced path, where emotional mastery becomes natural and well-being transforms from fleeting to permanent. When serenity is cultivated as a lifestyle, one no longer chases distractions to feel whole. Tranquility is no longer dependent on external circumstances, but on a mind trained to preserve emotional balance. This balanced life is marked by inner calm, acceptance of the uncontrollable, and the mental strength that sustains resilience. In this state, anxiety loses ground to clarity, and Stoic wisdom becomes a steady foundation for well-being. Practical examples prove this transformation. Someone who once reacted with anger to small provocations now, through Stoic practice, responds with patience. Another, once consumed by worries of the future, discovers inner peace by learning to focus on the present moment. This transformation may be gradual, but it is deep. Life stops feeling like a battlefield and becomes an exercise in serenity, like trading the chaos of stormy seas for the stillness of a calm lake. The secret lies in consistency. It is not enough to apply Stoicism only when crisis strikes. Serenity is built in the everyday habits: morning reflection, journaling, silence, and acceptance of what cannot be controlled. These are seeds planted daily, growing into deep roots in the mind. Through such constancy, inner peace stops being a temporary conquest and becomes a permanent state of balance. Choosing serenity as a way of life is also an act of wisdom in the face of life's brevity. Stoic philosophy reminds us that every moment is precious, and wasting it on needless anxiety is missing the chance to live fully. When serenity becomes a guide, life feels lighter, deeper, and more meaningful. In this simplicity lies the true wealth of a peaceful mind. And perhaps the greatest teaching is this: serenity is not the destination, but the path itself. Those who decide to walk it discover that Stoic philosophy is not just a refuge in times of crisis, but a lifestyle capable of turning each day into an exercise in inner peace. Now that we've unfolded all these pillars, it's time to craft an introduction that captures the viewer from the very first seconds. Now that you've walked this journey with me, the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you store it away as just another inspiring idea? Or will you transform your life by applying these Stoic practices in your daily routine? Serenity doesn't happen by accident. It's built in every morning reflection, in every pause of silence, in every act of accepting what cannot be controlled. And your mental health depends on these daily choices. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, how much more of your life will you waste fighting the uncontrollable, reacting impulsively, and losing your inner peace over small things? Stoicism has already revealed another way, a path of emotional balance, mental strength, and true well-being. But only you can decide whether to walk it. Here's the challenge. Start today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Write down your thoughts before going to sleep, or practice calmness when faced with provocation. Small actions create great changes. So tell me, are you ready to apply this Stoic wisdom and turn your mental health into a continuous state of serenity? If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here you'll keep learning how Stoic philosophy can be your ally in building inner peace and living a balanced life. After all, every video is an invitation to strengthen your mind and cultivate unshakable serenity.